I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today we'll continue our Tao Te Ching journey, starting from chapter 60. Governing a great state is like frying small fish. Using the Tao to administer the world, ghosts will not manifest their spirit. It is not that ghosts have no spirit, but that these spirits will not hurt people. It is not that these spirits will not hurt people, but wise people also do not hurt people. When the two, people and spirits, do not mutually hurt each other, therefore that is how virtue is paid and returned between them. Godard tells us that the way to fry small fish is not to scale or clean them, but to fry them as they are. To govern people, we got to take them as they are and not try to fix them first, though the analogy is not elaborated. Is teaching them thrift then part of the frying and not the scaling and cleaning? The next part of chapter 60 is also mystifying. When the Tao is used to govern, ghosts for some reason will not go and haunt people, along with the non sequitur that wise people also do not hurt people. When people and ghosts do not hurt each other, they are repaying virtue to each other. Perhaps the takeaway is that people should render virtue and respect also to ghosts, which the ghosts will repay reciprocally and hence not harm those people. Ghosts also respect the Tao, which speaks to the power of the Tao, but it should be no surprise since the Tao governs all things, even ghosts. Chapter 61. A big country is like a low-lying basin, where all under heaven converge. It is the world's female. To always conquer the male, the female uses stillness being lower. Therefore, when a big country assumes the lower role towards small countries, it wins over the small countries. When a small country assumes the lower role towards big countries, it wins over the big country. Some lower themselves in order to win, some lower themselves and therefore win. The big country merely desires to federate and increase the population. The small country merely desires to join the federation and serve the population. For both to achieve their desires, the big needs to assume the lower role and be humble. Water flows from higher to lower, and a low-lying basin is where water flows to. Taking on the lower position is one way to win. Lao Tzu is talking about humility. When both want the same thing and approach each other with humility, it is winning for both. When the bigger country does it, it reassures the smaller one that the bigger country is not belligerent in its intentions, and hence the small country may feel confident in aligning itself to the bigger. When the smaller country is humble towards the bigger country is then more inclined to help the smaller one. As Lao Tzu writes, some lower themselves in order to win, some lower themselves and therefore win. The small country lowers itself in order to win the bigger country. The bigger country, being bigger, need not lower itself, but precisely because it is in the superior position and yet lowers itself, it convinces the small country of its good intentions and therefore wins. Being humble is not a denigration or something shameful, but is even more powerful when it comes from a position of strength. Chapter 62. The follower of Tao is a wonder for all things. For the good person, she is a treasure. For the bad person, a place of refuge. Fine words can buy respect, fine deeds can improve people. People who are not good, should they be deserted? When the emperor is established and 3 ministers installed, instead of offering him jade disc before giving him a team of 4 horses, it is better to sit and ponder the Tao. Why did the ancients prize the followers of Tao so much? Is it not because the Tao can be obtained through seeking, because the guilty can be pardoned by it? Thus, all under heaven consider it precious. The Tao and its followers serve all people, both the good and the bad, as already stated in chapter 49. As for how fine words can buy respect and fine deeds can improve people, I am not sure if this is a criticism or praise. Since Lao Tzu has been downplaying the role of words, I assume he is saying that while words can win the respect of others, which is something we see today also, where the loquacious can be persuasive and demonstrate through eloquence their erudition, what is more vital is action that actually helps people. Instead of fine gifts for the new emperor, working with him on the contemplation of the Tao is better. The next part is curious. The ancients prized the followers of the Tao because the Tao can be obtained through seeking and the guilty can be pardoned by it, thus making it precious. Usually, what is hard to obtain is what is desired, precisely because of the difficulty in attaining it and hence its rarity. In the prevailing worldview, rarity is what makes a commodity valuable. What Lao Tzu is saying is, precisely because the Tao is attainable for those who seek it and can pardon crimes, the ancient people seek out the followers of the Tao. The Tao is not sought out as a commodity to trade, but because it is actually useful and beneficial. This is sensible rather than to aspire for things that are shiny yet useless, which is what many people pursue, for instance jewelry, branded goods, or gems and gold. Part of what makes some chapters of the Tao Te Ching so refreshing yet wise is that it reminds us of the basics of what matters in a world where what is foremost is in fact what matters least, where form is valued over substance. Chapter 63. Act without action, work without work, taste the tasteless. Make the big small and the many few, respond to grievances with virtue. Prepare for the difficult while it is still easy. Act on the big while it is still slight. The difficult matters of the world, work on them while they are still easy. The big matters of the world, work on them while they are still slight. This is how the wise person does not have to act on what is great and yet accomplishes the great. A person who lightly consents surely deserves little trust, since many easy things together are bound to bring much difficulty. Hence the wise person considers things difficult and therefore in the end faces no difficulty. This chapter 63 begins with a series of paradoxes. How does one act without action, work without work, and taste the tasteless? We already know Wu Wei means acting without self-assertion, effortlessly because the actions are in line with our natural intuition. That effortlessness when applied to work makes work feel like non-work since it is not laborious. To taste the tasteless speaks to me of the experience of emptiness. Lao Tzu seems to be telling us that we should try to experience emptiness instead of constantly seeking sensory stimulation, in order to understand the emptiness of the Tao better. Making the big small and the many few reminds me of Henry David Thoreau's admonition to simplify. Reduce complication and respond to grievance not with grievance but with virtue, such as fairness, kindness, and when suffering is unavoidable, stoically. The most effective way of reducing complication is to prepare for the difficulty while it is still not difficult. That is, before the shit hits the fan. Lao Tzu tells us that this is what the wise person does, to address difficulties while they are still easy, which is why he manages to accomplish great things, despite not having to tackle great difficulties. He tackles the difficulty before it becomes a great one. Even small and easy things, when there are many of them, become difficult and should not be underestimated. The wise person understands this, and hence by managing his own expectations, is able to overcome the obstacles without despair. Chapter 64. What is still is easy to grasp. What has not yet appeared is easy to plan for. What is fragile is easy to break. What is small is easy to scatter. Act before the problem exists. Manage before things get messy. A tree that takes both arms to wrap around began as a tiny shoot. A 9-story tower rises from the tired earth. A journey of 1,000 miles begins under your feet. He who acts fails, who grasps loses, which is why the wise person does not act, and hence does not fail, does not grasp, and hence does not lose. People often on the verge of success in their handling of matters, yet end up failing. If they were as careful at the end as when they began, they would not have failed. Therefore, the wise person desires to have no desires, and does not prize goods that are difficult to obtain. By learning to not be learned, he returns to what multitudes of people have passed over. He helps all things follow their self-nature and dares not act for his own selfish purpose. This chapter, 64, is a continuation of the theme of handling matters while they are still of a manageable size. To act before the problem exists, manage before things get messy. Lao Tzu reminds us that a big tree began as a small shoot, that a journey of 1,000 miles begins from where you are now. Lao Tzu tells us that the wise person does not act and hence does not fail, but it is not to be understood as how one does not try anything and hence does not fail or succeed. Wu Wei is to act non-assertively in a non-self-seeking way. The wise person does act, not to further his own ends, but to further virtue, to help all things follow their self-nature, so that they can fulfill their natures. He is not grasping, but by letting go of his desires, wins his own liberty. He trains himself to be consistent, working carefully at the start, but also at the end, and does not get complacent. He learns to not be learned. It is not that the wise person learns nothing, but he does not then accept it all as truth. He retains the ability to think independently, to continue questioning, and so is able to make new discoveries. He retains his curiosity and an inquiring mind. For instance, if no one ever questions received knowledge, we will still think that slavery or child labor is acceptable, or for that matter the planetary model of atoms, Aristotelian and Newtonian physics, monarchy or feudalism, the traditional role of men and women, heteronormativity and religious dogma as incontrovertible. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu overturns many accepted truths that are in reality not truths at all, which makes the Tao Te Ching a rather radical piece of literature and philosophy, radical in his time and in many parts even more radical today. In an ever-increasingly complicated world, returning to simplicity is radical. In a world where grasping and accumulation are the norm, to be told that it is the road to suffering is radical. In a time where fulfilling one's desire is what is desirable, to be told that the opposite is true is profoundly radical. In a world where the scientific worldview is dominant, to be told that the fundamental force in the universe and the origin of all things is not the Big Bang but the Tao is difficult to comprehend. Chapter 65. The ancient who were good with following the Tao did not enlighten the people, but kept them ignorant. The people are hard to rule when they have much knowledge. To use knowledge to rule the state leads to deceit. Not to use knowledge to rule the state leads to good fortune. These two alternatives are models. Always knowing these models is called profound virtue. Profound virtue, deep and far-reaching, seeming opposite to things, but leading to a great harmony. This infantilizing of the people is hard to swallow. Indeed, to make smart people do what one wants is more difficult than to fool stupid people into carrying out one's will. But that is not a good nor sufficient reason to keep people ignorant. It reeks of elitism. Su Ce explains that what the sage values is virtue. What others value is knowledge. Virtue and knowledge are opposites. Knowledge is seldom harmonious, while virtue is always in harmony. This problematization of knowledge has also been elaborated by modern philosophers, such as Bergson, who thinks that the reduction of reality into concepts and abstractions takes us away from reality, since the recombination of these abstractions can only give us back a warped view of reality. Bergson gives an example. No matter how many pictures of Paris you see, it is not the same as having an actual experience of Paris. If a motion is broken down into static frames, the joining of these frames will miss the essence of the movement, which is movement itself, which is precisely why Zeno has his paradoxes. Models being mistaken for reality has led to some dire outcomes. For instance, when the Nobel Prize-winning financial model to price derivatives by Black-Scholes led to a market failure and huge losses in 1998, or the financial crisis in 2008 caused by the splicing and recombination of low-quality mortgages into top-shelf securities. These are some examples of how knowledge led to conceit and finally deceit, though it is hard to think of examples of naivete leading to good outcomes other than by chance Forrest Gump style. Knowledge can be corrupting, but is not necessarily so. Wu Cheng explains that the ancient sages tried to make the people less knowledgeable in order that they become more natural. But does that work though? Less knowledge leads not to a quaint naivete, but superstitious thinking. Liu Chongping's explanation fits well with the Tao Te Ching. Those who rule without knowledge turn to heaven. Those who rule with knowledge turn to man. Unfortunately, it seems heaven is mostly, if not completely, silent. Chapter 66. Rivers and seas are able to be the king of the 100 valleys because they are good at being low-lying. Similarly, the wise person desiring to be superior to the people must use his words to be lower than them. Desiring to lead them, he must put himself behind. In this way, he can be above them without them feeling his weight, and be in front of them without them feeling slighted. Hence, the world is happy to push him and does not resent him. Because he does not compete, no one in the world competes against him. This chapter 66 is similar to chapter 61. It discusses individuals, while in 61 it discusses countries, but the concept is the same, to be lowly and humble. Lao Tzu starts with a powerful metaphor that the rivers and seas, because they are lower in altitude than the mountainous streams, can become the great bodies of water that they are. The wise person, in order to lead the people, has to lower or humble himself so that the people do not resent him. Because he is humble, they do not feel the burden of his orders and management. Because he puts his own needs behind those of the people, they are willing to support him. Because he does not contend with them in fulfilling his own desires or to feel superior, they also do not contend with him. The last idea has now appeared many times throughout the text. It took me many years to finally understand the Beatitudes from the book of Matthew in the Bible. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. The poor in spirit was a phrase that puzzled me, since the Bible and other religious texts often extol the virtues of the spiritual. It was until I realized that the poor in spirit are not referring to people who lack in spirituality but in self-assertion. They are the ones who are not highly spirited in the sense of those who are always ready for a fight or an argument. They are not bold or forward but retiring. The ones ready to listen and are not combative, not even trying to convert the other to their point of view, but to try to understand the point of view of the other. The meek, like the simple people Lao Tzu talks about, will inherit the earth because they grasp what is truly important. It isn't that they will have great wealth or fame, but they realize what is actually valuable. They will not be the ones conquering nations or corporate battles, but in surrendering themselves to the truth, will gain the eternal life these texts promise. Chapter 67. All under heaven says my Tao is great and beyond compare. It is great because it is different. If it is similar to other things, it would long ago have been considered trifling. I have 3 treasures which I hold fast and protect. The first is compassion, the second is thriftiness, the third is humility, where I dare not put myself in front of others. Being compassionate, I can be brave. Being thrifty, I can be generous. Being humble, I can become chief in usefulness. Nowadays, compassion is discarded for bravery, thriftiness is discarded for generosity, being behind is discarded to be in front, leading to death. If one is compassionate, he will win in battle and be strong in defense, because heaven will save him and be compassionate in protecting him. Lao Tzu refers to his Tao because Tao simply means road or path. Other belief systems such as Buddhism or Confucianism also uses that word to talk about their approach, but Lao Tzu is asserting that his Tao, the Tao of Taoism, is the superior Tao and differs from those other Taos. If it was similar, then it will not be important. 3 virtues in his Tao are compassion, thriftiness, and humility. The latter 2 has been elaborated in recent chapters. Because the wise person is thrifty, he can focus on the accumulation of virtue rather than wealth, since his material needs are easily met. Hence in chapter 67, Lao Tzu adds that he can be generous when the need arises, since he has been thrifty with his own spending. Being humble, as chapter 61 and 66 tells us, puts him in a good position to lead and win over the goodwill of others, individuals as well as countries. As for compassion, he has not used that term with regards to the wise person until now. In chapter 18, he mentions compassion as something arising when families are in discord. He talks about benevolence a fair bit, though in chapter 5, he says that neither the Tao nor the wise person are benevolent, but are instead impartial. However, his mention here of compassion as one of his most valued treasures, naming it first among the 3, is none too soon. He has talked about keeping the people's stomach full and bones strong but their ambition weak, keeping them ignorant, treating them like straw dogs, and frying them like small fish. He has talked about how a wise person should hide away like a hermit, yet he also often talks about how the wise person should rule, despite bringing danger to themselves in being in the public's eye. I called out this paradox in my commentary on chapter 53. Why should the wise person endanger himself by governing, especially when Lao Tzu has explicitly instructed for him to block the passage and shut the door to cultivate the Tao? It is because the wise person is also compassionate, braving the dangers of public life in order to serve the people, to lead by example in order to bring the Tao to them. It is his act of compassion, of love, of which he expects no rewards. In the Zhuangzi, which is a compendium of stories that exemplify Taoist philosophy, there is a tale of Sun Shu Ao, who was 3 times appointed to important positions and 3 times dismissed from them. When he was given the positions, it did not make him proud, and when he was let go, it did not make him despair either. He maintained a calm state of mind, just going with the flow. He posed an interesting question to his interlocutor. Does what matter reside in external things or in myself? If in those things, it has nothing to do with me. If in myself, it has nothing to do with those things. He understood that what matters is what is within him. Since what counts is what is within him, external prestige from his positions of power is irrelevant. He did not shrink from being appointed to the positions of authority. He also did not cling to them when he was dismissed from them. He did not refuse to act. Hence the Taoist teaching here is not of quietism and inaction. What he does refuse is to allow himself to be disturbed by these events. Chapter 68. A good soldier is not martial, a good fighter is not wrathful. The best victory does not engage the enemy, the best employer is humble. This is called the virtue of not striving. This is called the ability to use people's strength. This is called the ultimate compatibility with heaven since time immemorial. While soldiers should be ready for war, it is best that they do not have to go to war. For those who train in the martial arts, what they want is to fight other martial arts exponents skillfully. If they use their skills in anger, it will only sully their craft. The best way to win another country is not to go to war with them, but to win them over. The best employer is not one who lords over her employees, but recognizes their value. The employer needs the employees also, and is not doing the employees a favor by hiring them. It should be a relationship of mutual respect. By not striving against each other, they are able to use each other's strength. By being ready but not needing to go to war, the soldiers achieve the purpose of deterrence without violence and destruction. By fighting without wrath, the fighters get to use their skills without stirring up hate. By treating their employees with humility, the employer is able to get good work from the employees, and the employees are able to get good employment for their work. Thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor, and I'll see you soon.